just outside Richmond. The U.S. Geological Survey reports that there was also a smaller aftershock in the Virginia area that was not felt here, and we're staying in touch with the USGS for further updates. Thankfully, the NYPD, FDNY, Buildings and Transportation Departments, and other city agencies have reported no major damage or injuries or transportation or utility service disruptions in our city as a result. As of now, we have investigated 2 reports of possible minor damage. In all cases, we are not evacuating buildings. At the Red Hook West Housing Authority development in Brooklyn, there was a partial chimney collapse. Bricks fell from the chimney to the roof and on top of a water tower, but nobody was injured. NYCHA and Buildings Department engineers, as well as the NYPD and FDNY, have responded and said the building is safe for reentry. Engineers are assessing the next steps that may need to be taken. Another incident on 4th Avenue in Brooklyn was investigated, and engineers concluded no damage occurred as a result of the quake. But I think it's safe to say property owners should do due diligence and visually inspect buildings for cracks and contact building management in the city if they feel the situation warrants it. Turning to transportation, flights in and out of Kennedy, LaGuardia, and Newark airports have resumed. Amtrak service in and out of Penn Station was also suspended for about half an hour before resuming. As a precaution, Transportation Department bridge inspectors are visually inspecting the major river crossings, but there is no indication of any damage. The Department of Environmental Protection reports no damage to the water infrastructure in or outside the city. As a precaution, we are continuing to inspect dams and other significant infrastructure. Calls to 911 and 311 naturally spiked, but have returned to normal levels for this time of day and year. Let me just remind New Yorkers to only use 911 for genuine emergencies. We have activated the Office of Emergency Management's Situation Room. We also evacuated City Hall briefly just before 2 p.m., but quickly returned to work. And now I do understand for many people this was a stressful afternoon, but so far we've been lucky to avoid any major harm. Our thoughts are clearly with the people of Virginia and other areas more directly affected by the earthquake. Let me, before we take questions, summarize today's announcement for Spanish-speaking New Yorkers. El terremoto que sentimos en nuestra ciudad no resultó en daños o heridas severas. Tampoco tuvimos interrupciones a nuestro sistema de transportación ni a nuestras utilidades. Si tienen alguna emergencia, por favor, llame el 911 y para otras preguntas, llame el 311. And with that, we'll be happy to take some questions. Miss?
Are there any forecasts of future earthquakes or aftershocks? If there are any aftershocks, what are the advisories that our cities give?
You'll have to talk to the Geological Survey. Typically, an earthquake of this size has aftershocks that diminish with time. We live in a part of the country that has very few earthquakes, and certainly very few of measurable magnitude. But as today's event showed, the Earth is constantly moving, and that's what causes earthquakes, and we are not totally out of the woods, nor is any place. Yes, sir?
You mentioned that 911 saw a spike in activity. I'm wondering if you had a number of how many calls, but moreover, any sort of delays or backlog in response?
I do have an answer to your question. I did expect that, or Stu Lozer expected that. 911 experienced a spike of about 6,000 calls. 800 per half an hour at this time of the day is normal. Today's spike to 6,900 per half an hour. 311 experienced a spike of about 4,000 calls. 2,300 per hour at this time of day is normal. Today's spike to 6,300, but as we walked in here, I walked by a screen that shows we've had 41,000 311 calls to this time, and normally we would have 45,000 on a day. So not any delays to speak of. Obviously, you get some bunching, and there's a little more of a wait, but certainly the phones weren't, as you would say, ringing off the hooks. I think people realized what it was and went back into buildings after a period of time, and word sped pretty quickly. The fact that there was no damage was comforting to a lot of people. Yes, sir?
After an earthquake like this, are you in touch with any member of the federal government agency or geological might give you a warning of possible aftershock or anything else?
Well, there are likely to be aftershocks, and in fact, there's already been one. But each one typically is less with time and would not be felt this far away. This particular earthquake was felt, I'm told, as far away as New Hampshire. But the one that just occurred at 2 point something is relatively small, much smaller than half the strength of the earthquake that did take place. The scale is a logarithmic scale, so at half it's a lot less. And there's no reason to think that we're going to have anything else that we can feel. We have been in touch with them. Kaz Holloway, our Deputy Mayor for Operations, called the state to just tell them that what we were doing so that they would know as a courtesy. And, the PD, the FDNY, OEM buildings, they're ready should something else happen. But from tonight, as far as we're concerned, it's a regular time, and virtually every service seems to have returned to normal, and that's what you would expect. Yes, sir.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, at your command center, the MTA, should people feel safe going into the subway?
I'm told there were no delays in the subways whatsoever. That was one of the first things we checked with. Yes, we talked to the MTA and the Port Authority. There was just no disruptions. I'm told that at the airport some flights were held up before they took off in case there was damage, because the FAA doesn't like to have a lot of planes in the air they don't know what to do with. So if there's a potential for a disruption at destinations, they start trying to stop it at origins, but even that cleared up very quickly. The MTA reports no damage. Keep in mind, this infrastructure is built to a pretty high standard, and that's not to say that something couldn't happen, but we being this far away, you would not expect a lot of damage. And in fact, with the exception of a few bricks coming down, which incidentally happens almost every day in our city, there was just nothing to report. Yes, sir.
Mayor, you might tell us where you were and then whether you felt.
Sitting at my desk, and I remember feeling my right elbow was leaning against something, and there was a vibration, and the vibration kept getting bigger, and people started to say, hey, what's going on? And then you could feel it, and it got substantial. By the time we got up and everybody calmly walked towards the door, I think the vibrations, in all fairness, had stopped by that time, but everybody continued outside. What we did is made sure that we contacted everybody, and right away I talked to the police commissioner, and Kaz talked to the other commissioners, and there was just no evidence elsewhere in the city of any damage. So people's fears, I think, if they had them, they dissipated pretty quickly. And the fact that it was good weather and